Welcome to Sourced Not Found, a show about the worst versions of your favorite things. Every other week we explore an IP, franchise, or fandom by way of its sequels, spin-offs, and side projects. Basically anything but the source material. I'm Brandon June, and based on 2/3 of my choices today, I am just as much of a weebelo as ever. That's a callback.
And my name is Bo Woodall, and I've been here the whole time. I know I stole that, but it's still really good.
Also, well, that's a call forward. I got a call back, and I just realized I think my callback is for a Patreon episode. Most of y'all don't even know what I'm talking about. But
hey, guys,
that's a call forward.
Check out our Patreon. You get to hear all about Weebelos.
There we go.
As is tradition, it's the end of the year. It's
long-standing annual tradition that we've done exactly once.
It's that time of year. We're getting real close to those resolutions. We're in a really, hopefully you're in a very good place, full of holly and jolliness in whatever form it takes for you and yours. And so Brandon and I are also going to be as holly and jolly as possible by talking about what we sourced this year. Welcome to Source Not Found, sourced in 2024.
It was a hell of a year.
So I thought it would be fun if we did very similar to last year, because tradition is tradition.
Yeah.
We have 3 things that we picked. Each of us picked 3 individual items that we absolutely loved this year. That maybe it was the first time that we experienced the IP or the genre. Maybe it's something that we've loved for a long time, but something has changed with that made it more impactful for us. But here we start at 3 and go up to our number 1.
Yeah. Really, as long as we liked it enough to source it. I mean, spend a substantial chunk of this year investigating it, reading through it, watching through it, exploring the genre, whatever it is.
Because that is the key to sourcing something. It is spending a good amount of time focusing not just on the immediate thing that you find interesting about the subject, but going into all the things about that subject that you aren't aware of necessarily. Say you love a single song. Listening to the album or previous albums by that artist is sourcing that artist. And that's what we do.
Or if you're like me, making 5-hour-long playlists about that artist or genre.
Dude, seriously. My
playlists are not playlists. They're like radio stations. They're channels. I don't know when to stop. I can't stop. I never know. Like, I just keep finding more. Go on the playlist.
The playlist I gave you was, 16 songs?
I think it was an hour.
And the playlist you gave me was 118.
I looked at yours like, that's cute. I remember my first playlist.
I remember my first playlist. You're a bastard. Yeah. That's really good.
Speaking of, well, I don't know. I was thinking like segue, but then I don't know if that's your first one or not.
It is not.
Is it?
No.
Okay, so I fucked that up. That's not my first one either. Different segue. Segue to a segue.
You know what? I'll start us off.
Cool.
My number 3 for this year is Spider-Man.
I think I'm familiar with this character.
You may be. He's not the biggest deal, but
he's not. I feel like that last movie only made like over $1 billion or so.
Yeah, it was like 1.3 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Do better, Sony. Do better.
Yeah, come on. Now, did you hear about that? Sony is like considering selling the name Spider-Man back to Marvel because of the failures they've had trying to create their own Sony cinematic universe. It doesn't matter. The important part is Spider-Man has been a staple in my life since I was 3 years old. Like
3.
Yeah. Like one of the first fictional characters I was really ever introduced to.
Damn. Okay.
The amount of love I have for both Peter Parker and Spider-Man and some of the secondary and tertiary characters within that universe is boundless.
I'm curious. How were you introduced to Spider-Man? Like at 3 years old, what did you come across?
I basically just stumbled across, like, my cousin had comic books.
Yeah.
And he would show them to me. And the image of Spider-Man carrying a man, I remember this vividly. The cover was Spider-Man carrying a man away from a flaming building while thwipping a web away, is honestly one of my first memories that I can recall.
That's awesome.
Is that image.
That's awesome that it was a comic book. I wasn't sure if it would have been that because, you know, at that age, it's more likely you saw an action figure or a cartoon or something. But...
Oh, I demanded action figures every year. Yeah. Like, I wanted toys of Spider-Man. I wanted art. I wanted to be Peter Parker, despite the fact that I am absolute dog shit at science.
That's cool, though, man. Because for me, it was X-Men. Because my uncle was such a big comic book collector, but it was the relaunch of just X-Men, not Uncanny, but like I think in 1992, 91, 92, that the Jim Lee launch of X-Men and that cover, like those covers, seeing those for the first time, you know?
Yeah.
But I think I would have been like maybe 4 or 5, a little bit older.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
I was 3 or 4 when I saw the image, but it is honestly one of the first vivid images I can recall from childhood. I think. But that's not the important part. The important part is, why was it so important to me this year?
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 5 came out. That was this year, right?
Last year?
I played it this year.
New to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say
you sourced it this year.
I did. Maybe it came out. Did it come out like holiday season 2023? Because if that's the case, it didn't come out in 2023. It came out in 2024. You played it in 2024.
It was October 20th, 2023.
Yeah. So like, I probably got it. I mean, I would have loved to have. Oh, God, that's right. I couldn't start playing it until we got back from the Philippines. Listeners,
this guy over here out there living life or some shit.
You're
like
in
me,
Japan.
I didn't have to wait. I played it. I played it right away.
When we got back from the Philippines, I dove headfirst into it and probably spent like 45, 50, 60 hours on it. I loved every second of it. It made me feel like I was Spider-Man.
For sure. They all have, right? Those games, the first one and then the Miles Morales spin-off and then 2, man.
If Insomniac ever stops making Spider-Man games, it will be a crime. I think they do an incredible job. I think this game is a masterpiece.
I agree. I love the, like, narratively, even some of the directions it takes, like certain characters, and you know, even like as a setup, seeing like the villains and knowing a little bit about what the game was going to be about, I thought I knew what to expect, and just no, the way it like reinterprets some of the well-known storylines in the Spider-Man universe in that game is so smart, and
that is exactly why
surprising.
Spider-Man is on my list this year.
Yeah.
Is the reinterpretations. The video game universe version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man and Mary Jane is wonderful. If you haven't played the game, I am not going to spoil anything for you now. But
no, we shouldn't.
Play it, enjoy it, bask in the story the same way you would the comic book series, and walk away from it feeling hope. One of the things that Marvel has done for so many years has absolutely been fucking over Peter Parker. Like, he is not allowed to be happy.
Mm.
In fact, currently, the Marvel creative director of the main Marvel Comics universe says that Peter Parker can never be married to Mary Jane. They can be in a relationship, but he can never be stable with her. And I hate that so much because I need a good happy ending. And this is a character that I have loved for 35 years of my life.
I just you join the Marvel stable of superheroes or the Catholic Church as like a priest. Like you have to take the same vows.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
This is it for you. You wear this suit and
a lot of
closes some doors
of stable relationships. You can have tons of smaller relationships, but we'll either kill off the love interest or she'll fall in love with somebody else and ghost you completely. So the video game hit me hard. The other thing that hit me hard is there is a new series. You know how 616 is the main Marvel universe, I believe, currently? This is 6616. It's a parallel universe. And they reintroduced the Ultimate brand through Marvel.
Okay.
And so there is a new Ultimate Spider-Man.
And these new Ultimates, because like we closed down the Ultimate Universe, I want to say like 7-8 years ago, maybe like Secret Wars, right? That all collapsed
around 10 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Was it that long?
Between 8 and 10,
man.
They killed off Ultimate Spider-Man. They brought all the worlds together, and now they're starting to like introduce parallel universes, as opposed to, I don't know. The science has, I don't get it, but. The Peter Parker we're introduced to is a 35-year-old bearded man happily married to Mary Jane with 2 children.
Okay.
And he works with Uncle Ben at the Daily Bugle. Aunt May died in a terrorist attack a couple of years, like 2 years back. And that is where we meet Peter Parker.
Gotcha.
And he is strong and smart and scared and a good dad and a good husband. And for all intents and purposes, he is happy, but he feels like something is missing. And then he is given his powers. And it is wonderful to see an adult version of this character be created with a real life.
That's not what I expected to hear. I expected you to tell me like he was able to create all that for himself in the midst of being a superhero. But no, he comes into the powers post
all of it.
That's a very interesting angle. And it's not often you see like an origin story so late in a character's life.
Yeah, it's like he's having a midlife crisis and it is getting spider powers. But yeah, I just the entire reimagining of the Spider-Man mythos through all of these different universes and all of these different ideas and concepts and creators has made me remember why I fell in love with the character in the first place. And it's just it's up there for me. So that's my number 3.
That's an awesome number 3. You've just sold me on checking out this new comic series.
You really should. It does some really it does some really crazy shit with the entire mythos and characters. I love it.
I'm on board. I love Spider-Man 2 like you. Narratively, like I said, also just like the gameplay, and up until Astrobot, I want to say it was like the best usage of the PS5 controller, like the haptics.
The haptics, yeah.
Man, some of the, I don't want to spoil it. You get a suit, it makes some sounds. Those sounds come out of the controller. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
I'm going to probably replay it this year again because it's that good of a game.
Right on. Good number 3. Probably better than my number 3 because my number 3 is kind of like, I mean, yes, we want to talk about our favorite things of this year. Also, I'm not going to lie. There's another benefit where we don't have to like read a book or play a full game here at the end of the year. We can just sort of like relax a little bit and just talk about shit we already did.
Yeah.
And
Good chill stuff.
I really already did this, but it was so impactful. And like when I thought about the most like meaningful media experiences I had this year, like I just had to put it on the list, even though we've talked about it twice. So
sure,
my number 3 is sort of just like a callback to, what was that? Episode 20 and also episode 33 of our show. It was sourcing survival horror origins. So,
okay.
I spent a lot of time this year playing the precursor to one of my favorite gaming series of all time, which is Resident Evil. I'm such a big Resident Evil fan. Those games are really important to me. And to go through the Alone in the Dark series and then also to play Sweet Home. To really just like round out bolster my understanding of the original Resident Evil game and why it is the way it is and what the creators were influenced by and what it was iterating upon, like building on, and like going through the Alone in the Dark original game and just seeing so much of that Resident Evil like DNA there, like the vibes, the campy but kind of cozy mansion vibes in that original game and how that was replicated in Resident Evil and why that original Resident Evil, even though there are better games that really like build on the gameplay mechanics and sort of how horror is presented to the player, and so many clever ways in like subsequent entries, but just that original game still is a favorite of mine just because it is that cozy campy mansion in the midst of the horror, but just like all the weird rooms and lighting and wallpaper and like strange hallways that just have like a sitting like an armchair, nestled in the back of this like hallway that's just nothing but doors, and you just like almost like liminal spaces or just weird spaces. Like what function could this room have ever served in any reality? It's just so strange. And to see like the origin point of some of that stuff too. And I love those vibes. It was just, and I went through 4 Alone in the Dark games, going up into the new one, and to really like explore that series and be so impressed at how it delivered the narrative, how it delivered the atmosphere, but then also like how it played as a game back in 1992, that first one. And then again with Sweet Home coming out in 1989 and how ambitious that game was. So I didn't want to ramble on about them for too long, but the fact that, if I'm being honest with myself, like, yeah, those are some of the best experiences I had this year. Like, yeah, I spent a lot of time sourcing survival horror.
So I have one question for you.
Yeah.
If you please. With all the sourcing of this beautiful genre, which we both love, was there something from all of these sources as you played through them that jumped out at you that was either like, oh my God, this is so far before its time, or, oh, I can directly see how this has impacted every subsequent survival horror game?
We talked about some very specific things to Resident Evil in the Sweet Home conversation
the
about
door.
Just like how certain, the door, the turnaround of the man, for like that zombie animation. But honestly, it's funny you phrased the question that way because it was a point I was thinking about when I was preparing for today's show. And I'm starting to wonder if I just want to stop using the phrase before it's time, because I guess the real thing I want to talk about today is like the joy of doing your homework. Spoken like a true teacher, I know. But
hey, bud,
the joy of
sound older.
Seriously though, to have something that you are curious about, to have something that you enjoy, a genre or a game or whatever, and like you hear about its influences over the years. Like I was always aware of Sweet Home. I'd always heard about Alone in the Dark, in like gaming magazines, reading EGM as a kid, and they would like reference these things, and always like having that curiosity. But to like actually finally seize upon it, to take the plunge, to take the deep dive through it and really go through it and struggle through it, because like a lot of these games, they're very like archaic in some ways and they can be kind of frustrating or whatever.
Yeah, I remember.
But on the other side of like that experience, to just so much better understand it and appreciate it, you know? And I think there's a joy in that. I find it very fulfilling. And it is doing your gaming homework. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is. And I think sometimes it's worth like really setting aside some time to really explore something and try and understand like the zeitgeist, try and understand a certain time period of like what game design looked like in that time. And not even just like as a singular game, but like in a series. It's so fun to just watch the mechanics build and be explored and like expand in subsequent games. How the narrative unfolds, like how storytelling changes, becomes more modern. You like to the specific things. I think I probably brought up all these things. I know I brought up the Sweet Home ones, like Alone in the Dark 2. You just dropped into like the logo literally explodes onto the screen, and then you're just like in the midst of like a firefight in this hedge maze.
Right.
And like how Resident Evil 2 just like drops you on either side of that exploded semi. You're just in the streets full of zombies.
Yep.
Like the first one was a very slow build. Like we're wandering around this first dining room off the, the main hall of the mansion. And you get a little time to like sort of build up the tension, build up to that first zombie reveal. But 2 is just like, here we go. We're in it. You know what to expect. You played the first one. Here we go. Action. That was cool. That was like a 1-to-1 almost. But yeah, I think going back to the idea of like before it's time, the more of this I do, the more homework I do, the more I realize like I just keep finding so many gems like this from like earlier periods and realizing like how, again, ahead of the time seemingly it was. And then like the more you play, the more you realize like actually there were so many games doing this. There was like a lot of stuff out there that was so impressive.
Okay, I think
based
I
on
understand.
like the technological limitations that I don't like. I'm not criticizing the use of the phrase. I'm like thinking myself, like I'm starting to wonder, like no, I think just we are just as humans always just like so fucking impressive in all time periods. And I go back and I look at something that's like 3 decades old and it's doing all this shit that I didn't expect it to do, and then to like keep doing that homework, to keep like diving and like delving in further, and to find like. And actually, Alone in the Dark wasn't the only thing doing this. Look at these games over here, and look at this. And there was like a whole suite of games that exhibited these same sorts of design features and mechanics and 3D environments. And it was a very impressive time. I guess I want to like not critique the phrase, but just instead of shouting out the singular game, let's hear it. Let's hear it for 1992. What a fucking a year that was ahead of its time. A time that was ahead of its time, I guess is what I'm getting at. You know what I mean?
Sure, I was 6 years old.
Yeah. We were too busy looking at the cover of Spider-Man and X-Men. Yeah. Yeah, man. I was so impressed with those games. I'm just so impressed with
that genre. Yeah.
That was just genre, but then just gaming history, just like the more I discover, and just there's so many like black holes in my understanding because I wasn't old enough to play them at the time. And I feel like, yeah, like the 80s going into the 90s there. Like I was, I got my first console, the Super Nintendo, in 1993. And it was all like consoles, you know what I mean? Like PC gaming. There's a lot there I haven't experienced.
That's really cool.
So I'm looking forward to more homework is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I that's the best way to be, right? It's funny you bring up games ahead of their time or games of their time, because my number 2 is a recent love.
Okay.
It is the TV show Game Changer on Dropout streaming service, formerly College Humor.
Nice segue. Well
Thank you. I appreciate it. I kind of want to give a brief rundown of what this show is supposed to be. It has been going for 6 seasons. Every episode is a different game show, hosted by the same gentleman, Sam Reich, who you would recognize from College Humor and all sorts of videos and projects across the board. He's absolutely brilliant, and so is his team. Just like the briefest of rundown. The first episode is called Lie Detector. There are 3 contestants behind podiums. A machine is rolled out, and that is all they know. And then they are asked questions. questions like, what is your name? What is your middle name? Do you cry when you watch movies sometimes? Do you have holes in your underwear? And the machine will light up a green or red light when they respond. And then it will ask questions like, for 5 points, or Sam will ask a question like, for 5 points, tell me a deep secret, a vulnerable secret. And then they will tell the secret, and if it is true, quote unquote, the machine will light up green, and they will get points up to Sam when it comes to how vulnerable the secret was. What they don't know is backstage, their partners, lovers, fiancés, whatever, are controlling the machine the entire time.
Okay.
So, like, every game, contestants will walk out and have no idea what game they're walking into until the game begins. In fact, I believe it starts with, welcome to Game Changer, the only game show where the game changes every episode. I'm Sam Reich. I've been here the whole time, but I'm your host, and the only way to win is by playing. The only way to win is by knowing. The only way to know is by playing, and the only way to play is by beginning. So let's begin. And every episode begins that way, and every episode is so insanely clever. And what makes it better for me is that it seems like both Sam Reich, as not only a CEO of this company, but also the host of the show, cares so much about his people. Like, watching the backstage stuff, like, per episode, he only asks people to do episodes if he feels like they would be comfortable, and even then there is a scale of comfortability. Like, you can say no. Like, I am not gonna not pay you for not doing this episode because you feel uncomfortable. Like, one of them was like a pseudo Fear Factor. One of them was like an episode of The Bachelor, where one of the cast members who is bisexual has to basically play The Bachelor with men and women all trying to vie for his attention. And, like, it is known at any moment, if you feel uncomfortable or if you feel like this is too far, we put the kibosh on it. All right. It's game, set, match. No hard feelings, nothing, no problems. Like, the community that they have created within their own little, like, not only streaming service, but improv community is magical. So much so that they are able to get guest stars like Wayne Brady and the Improvisational Shakespeare Company. And, oh my God. Oh, Giancarlo Esposito. And, like, they are able to get all of these people who just will randomly show up for a good time. I don't know. Every episode is funny. The entire cast is wonderful and not afraid to be themselves. And it is just, it's rare to find something that seems so inappropriate be so wholesome. And it feels so right to watch it.
It's funny, like, everything you just said, because it was one of my main takeaways, like, while I was watching it, I just was continually coming back to the idea of, I can't believe how good the rapport between all these, like, contestants and people on the show is. Like, everyone is just so natural with one another, and I wasn't familiar with, like, just how, like, much they've worked together. I definitely recognized someone from, I think we have a new returning character for Source Not Found, Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Brennan Lee Mulligan, baby.
Second year in a row on the Source in 2020, whatever.
Him, right? Erika Ishii, Lou, and Abri. I don't think Abria actually shows up in Game Changer yet. but she is on the network Dropout through their D&D larger thing. But Erica, Lou, and Brennan have all showed up on several episodes of Game Changer. So yeah, second year running, baby. Let's keep it going.
He's so incredible. But yeah, so like knowing like some of them have other projects together and show up here and there, you know, in the same space and work together. But still, like every episode, you gave me a few episodes to watch.
Yep.
And I burned through them all in one sitting because I couldn't stop. It's like, it was very similar to Reacher from last year, although I don't think I'd even heard of this show. But like last year, you brought up Reacher. I think I'd heard the name. It was not something I would have ever watched, probably just on my own without your recommendation. And then once I was in, I was in.
Yeah.
So same with this. Like, yeah, I don't know that I ever, like, even if I were aware of it, probably wouldn't have sat down to actually watch one of these. If I just like heard the concept pitched to me, like, oh yeah, that sounds amusing, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff out there to watch and read and whatever. But man, like, and I'm glad I picked the episode I did to start with. I think you had me start with Make Some Noise.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, god damn, I mean, you could say this for any episode, but like everything I watched, like everyone is just, it's disgusting how funny and clever and quick
and talented. Oh my God. It's not even fair.
It's not. I'm just like, I don't know where this, they're like divinely inspired. Like, how are you coming up with this in a fraction of a second? Like some of the best bits I've ever heard, some of the best impressions I've ever heard, just the wildest, most absurd, just cleverest responses to these prompts I've ever heard. And the show, like the structure itself also just comes up with some really wild ass prompts, some very funny, strange, just ideas to riff on.
I would like to point out one that I didn't send to you because I thought it may have been too much for one of your first episodes. But there is an episode, I think it's season 5, called Escape the Green Room. And the 3 contestants of the episode, 2 of them are Brennan and Lou from Worlds Beyond Number from last year. Come to find out, the green room that they have been preparing for the episode in is actually a giant escape room that they are locked in.
That's awesome. Okay, I haven't made it to that one yet.
And like there are a few moments where they lose their shit. Like they're breaking, like pulling off guitars and picture frames off the walls and just crushing them. And like, you don't understand. We haven't had a bathroom break in over 2 hours. Like, I am hungry. It's absolutely incredible. But yeah, I cannot recommend not just the game show, not just Game Changer, but the entirety of Dropout as a streaming service and project or product enough. It has provided both me and Kaylin so much joy and laughter through what has been a very rough year on a few occasions. And if you ever need levity, that's where you go, man.
For sure. I had a smile on my face like the entire time I was watching it. Like, that's like the thing about the show. Like, Brennan Lee Mulligan, again, I'm just overwhelmed. I can't wrap my head around this guy.
Yeah.
How good he is.
Yeah.
Just like last year I can't wrap my head around like how he is so fucking good as a dungeon master and just like coming up with these narratives like off the cuff and these voices and then just to see like, oh, and his comedic timing is like unparalleled. But then like he's just like right at home again, like next to Jessica McKenna. Oh, she was like so hilarious in that episode. McKenna,
yeah.
You mentioned Lou Wilson. He is hysterical. Like everyone on every episode I watched, like I just can't believe these people. They're unreal. And not even with everyone's timing, but like the way the show is edited, where there's just like no downtime. It is like they cut out all the dead air and like dead space between every bit. Not that I think there's that much. Like a lot of it is just like rolling along.
There are times it seems like one shot. Like it's wild. Yeah.
But it's like it's like a sugar rush. It's just a constant flood of hilarity. Like I'm inundated with jokes, and they're all just like 10 out of 10 most of the time. And then also the way the show production like will kind of step in at times to reinforce something. So it was what was the coffee episode?
Like My Coffee. Yeah.
Like My Coffee. where they do a bit later on, and they add like a bunch of buttholes in post-production to like flood the screen with like butthole effects.
Yeah.
And then Lou Wilson does his bit where like he's imagining
that's Sam Says. Yeah, that's Sam Says.
Oh shit! You're right.
It was Sam Says like introduce a visual effect to go here.
Yes.
And
right. This is the problem with just watching a bunch of episodes in a row.
and Brennan's wife just says buttholes.
That's right. But they cut to Lou, and he's doing like he's imagining this whole like Ocean's 11, like Steven Soderbergh, like panels within panels, like moving around the screen, and they do it all, and then they add the buttholes in on top of that. I was like, this is the best thing I've seen in so long. Yeah, I loved it. Thank you for this. I'm gonna watch more.
Perfect.
I'm gonna source this myself. A follow up on last year, I did source all Reacher. Like I'm waiting for more.
Yeah, season 3 comes out February 22nd. I just restarted watching the whole season. Yeah, the whole series.
I'm there.
Yeah, but that's my number 2.
Hell yeah. My number 2 is Japanese City Pop. One of my notorious days-long playlists.
118 songs, I believe.
That's not even that long by some of my playlist standards.
I was going to say, it's not ABBA.
That's a little guy.
Not ABBA.
Well, it's because, I just really got into this genre this year. So maybe just a quick introduction. What is Japanese City Pop? I'm just going to share a little bit of Wikipedia here. Japanese City Pop is a loosely defined form of Japanese pop music that emerged in the late 1970s and peaked in popularity during the 1980s. It was originally termed as an offshoot of Japan's Western-influenced new music, but came to include a wide range of styles, including funk, disco, R&B, AOR, soft rock, and boogie, that were associated with the country's nascent economic boom and leisure class. It was also identified with new technologies such as the Walkman, cars with built-in cassette decks, and FM stereos, and various electronic musical instruments. So, a lot of the songs on that playlist, I've heard here and there over the years. I can't really say what kicked this off. I think maybe I was just...
That was gonna be I have no idea where the fuck this one came from, bud.
Honestly, for a while, because like I've been keeping track all year. Like I know we're doing this at the end of the year. So make a note on the phone of like, hey, this is maybe something to talk about when we get to December. For a long time, it was doom jazz, honestly. Back to Alone in the Dark. I got into doom jazz for a little bit.
I did too.
Yeah, that's an honorable mention. But Japanese City Pop as a genre beat it out. I think I was like working on something. I might have been like studying or something one night, and just like I had like ambient YouTube music, in the background. Some just like user generated playlists, and then like something came on. I was like, oh, this is a great song, "Plastic Love" by Maria Takeuchi, which that's track number 2.
Yes, it is.
You might not. Okay, yeah.
No,
it's like
I remember. Yeah,
that's like the City Pop song.
Not my favorite, but good.
It's a good one. Yeah. It is probably a favorite of mine. It's up there. It's just great. But yeah, that, and then I think that like maybe, I don't know, the algorithm like served up something else. Like, oh yeah, this is like same vibe, and I don't think I know this one. And then, next thing I knew, it was like a couple hours later, I'm just like seeking out more and more of this city pop. And it's catchy, but then I think there's something beyond like what the music is. It's like, I love the instrumentation. I love the like sort of atmosphere and the vibes, but there's like a coziness and nostalgia to this sound. I mean, that's why I wanted to share the Wikipedia intro there, because it mentions how this music is associated with this economic boom, like that Japanese bubble that they were experiencing during that time.
If I may.
Yeah.
I listened to about, I don't know, 2.5 hours of City Pop in preparation for this episode. It is unfailingly positive and optimistic. And there are times it feels, I don't want to say sexy, but it does. Like adjacent to that, like sultry. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like, pardon me for sounding old, but it's bumping. Like, the bass, the whatever whatever synths they use on different tracks, but it is all synth and bass rhythm heavy with wonderful vocalization that you don't always necessarily need to understand, because I don't speak Japanese, but I could still walk away from a song going, holy shit, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's magical. Absolutely magical.
It is. Like, it takes all those elements, all those genres, and it packages them in something very, and I don't mean this as a negative, like, digestible. There's no dissonance. It's just, everything is contained within this, like, very familiar structure of a pop song, 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It goes to places you expect it to go, and yet it's catchy along the way, but then it goes in a lot of interesting and surprising places at times, like as a genre and as like individual tracks. There is like the sultriness and the like unrelenting positivity within that, but then also a lot of the songs that I have on my playlist have a more like somber tone. Like I shared a Natsuno Clock song.
It doesn't seem depressing, you know? Like,
no. I think it's like, to me, like listening to a lot of this, I am like driving down a highway through like a Japanese cityscape at night with like the neon twinkling in the distance and the stars above, you know? And sometimes I'm literally doing that here, but then I'm always in that place. And I'm at, like, it's like the midnight hour, you know? And I'm like listening to this, and that moment in time can take a lot of different forms. Sometimes we're on the way to a party. Sometimes we're on the way home from a party. Sometimes we're feeling more introspective, and sometimes we're just like, you know, 10 out of 10 hype for whatever it is that's going on in the city that night. And I think I get all that within like this range of songs that, you know, I put on my playlist and that you listen to, you know? So yeah, I don't think there's any like depressingness to it, but there is like times where it slows down and gets more introspective, and more thoughtful, and makes the mind wander to those places.
So
yeah,
the way I felt about it walking away from it, and again, this is not a criticism as much as it is an accolade. It felt like elevator music if it was elevator music that you wanted.
Yeah. I think that's what I was getting at with, like, it takes a lot of disparate genres and influences and packages them nice and neatly into something that can sort of like wash over you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, it came up in like me just like studying something, and like in the background, it was perfectly suited for background ambiance. But then also when I like sit down and give an album or a song my full attention, it also is complex enough and interesting enough throughout to keep me engaged as like an active listener.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, and like talking about that, you know, that driving through the Japanese cityscape, you know, it kind of makes me nostalgic for a time, even though I have never experienced that time. You know what I mean? You feel the nostalgia for an age that, like, in your lifetime, in your personal life, didn't exist. Like, I never drove into Tokyo, you know, in the mid 80s, listening to this on the radio on my way to my own personal experience in the sort of time and culture that this music represents.
Right.
But I can feel a nostalgia for that age almost. And I think when I mentioned earlier, there's a coziness and nostalgia to it. It reminds me of another sort of genre or just sound that does the same thing for me in a different way, which is like a lot of the radio hits, like the American and like, I guess, stuff coming out of the UK, but like Western music that was on the radio when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, you know, that like my parents would listen to. So like Toto, Phil Collins, Bruce Hornsby, you know, Chris de Burgh, probably like the ultimate song to like sort of encapsulate that sort of very hyper produced, lush sound on the radio, like maybe Lady in Red by Chris de Burgh.
Sure.
Like that kind of shit. It kind of hits on like a similar space within me where you are at that sort of end of history. The Cold War is over. Everything's booming. It's the 90s. The future is bright. We got nowhere to go but up.
That's what I felt.
And it's that sound, that feeling, to return to that, which there's a definite nostalgia there, before we kind of knew how fucked up this world was already, and then how fucked up it was going to get. And there's that, but then it has that, but it also has the benefit of being like music that's unfamiliar to me, and also incorporates influences and a culture and genres that are less familiar to me. And so it has the benefit of like the familiarity, but then also being continually surprising in the places it goes.
Sure.
Whereas like that music I just listed with like the Phil Collins and shit, like I've heard those songs a million times.
Right.
Like, yeah, I know where the Simply Red track is going to go. So it doesn't have that element. So yeah, I've spent a lot of this year listening to that. I think if I had to shout out, like I mentioned a couple, or I guess I mentioned one name. I don't want to like name drop a bunch. I also think maybe this year, maybe don't play it on the show. We've been posting to YouTube, and we tend to get in trouble.
Fair enough
for that. But you can. I will link. We'll post a link in the show notes. I am one of those weirdos that uses Apple Music. Sorry, Spotify. But you can at least see the track list and check out some of the stuff on your own. But I think top of my list would be like Junichi Inagaki, Anni, Miria Takeuchi, like I mentioned. But I think honestly, right now, probably like a third of the playlist, a decent chunk is Hitomi Toi.
Yeah.
Which
you mentioned. Right. You damn right.
Oh, that's just good. And that's not even like, I don't think it would technically be in the city pop genre, at least not, like it's newer music. She's a modern
2012,
artist.
I think, is one of the albums I listened to.
Yeah, some of them are pretty current. Like I don't know when her latest one came out. She's got a new single that came out this year. The one that really, I think the first song I heard was Dive.
That's the album I listened to in its entirety today. City Dive is the album from the 20th of June 2012, according to Spotify. By the way, really, really hard to figure out what the songs are called or what the lyrics are, because everything is in kanji.
Oh, yeah, that would be tough.
Kaylin listened to one song and was like, is this one about Godzilla? And I was like, I honestly have no idea, but that would be really fucking weird.
That's, there is like, and I still have it because, I'm not fluent by any stretch, but like, it is funny, like when I have friends or family in Japan and, I'm just like showing them something and they're just like, they have this, you can see it like in the way that they remark about the signage around them. Like, oh, that looks so beautiful. What does that kanji mean? Like, that's an ad for Toyota. Oh,
that's for
what is this traditional sign over here? Like,
that's a toilet.
That's stamina ramen. Yeah, the toilet this way.
That's the shitter. It says the kanji there actually says shitter.
Yeah, and no, that one next to it, that's also shit. It's don't leave dog shit here. Pick it up and throw it away. Yeah, but no, like right, it's just like these sort of foreign characters that we don't know, and they just seem imbued with meaning, and they are. But you know what I mean? Everything takes on like this sort of like extra sense of importance and almost like mystical thinking at times, magical thinking. Like I don't know what is obscured behind this wall, like this language barrier. It could be anything. It could be Godzilla.
It could be a shitter.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It could be a shitter. Japanese shitty pop?
Yeah, Japanese shitty pop. But none of it I've heard is shitty. But
and it's my number 2. It's my number 2.
God damn it.
I didn't do that on purpose. I swear.
Speaking of music, my number 1 this year.
You're on the segues today. Let me tell you what.
Thanks, man. Is Childish Gambino. I'm going to try to be brief because it's really hard to talk about him as a musical artist outside of his film accolades as well and writing, because he's absolutely brilliant. You may know him as Donald Glover from Community or Atlanta or Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But he is also known as Childish Gambino, and he is a rapper, R&B artist, soul artist, funk artist, maybe even.
He's on my funky playlist.
We'll have to get that in a second.
The funk one. It's called Funked Up. It's not.
No, I mean the song, not the playlist.
Oh, I mean, I can tell you later.
Yeah. We'll do that.
Yeah.
He started rapping in 2000. Well, he started rapping before this, but he released his first mixtape in 2008. and he released it for free. He released 5 full mixtapes from 2008 to 2010 for free to the public with professional like sound editing and design almost by himself. In 2011, he released an album called Camp. It is one of my favorite albums to run to. I probably listened to it, I don't know, probably 80 times this year running. Okay, getting away from the rest, because I could go into next was Because the Internet, and then he released Awaken My Love, which was the first time he'd ever really sang, and it was very, very focused around like funkadelic. It was like influences from Prince and Parliament and like the Stax playlists, like 60s and 70s soul. And then he started doing a mixture of rap and this R&B soul stuff, and I love every fucking second of it. Just not the big thing, but he's gotten 5 Grammys, 2 Emmys, and 2 Golden Globes. He's been nominated for over 100 different national awards or national and international film and music awards, and has won over 50. He's only 3 or 4 years older than us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He is prolific and talented and wonderful. This year, he released 2 separate albums. At a Vista, which was a completed version of an album he released during COVID. Ariana Grande shows up on it on a song, which is called Time, and it's brilliant. The other album he released this year is called Brando Stone and the New World, which is the soundtrack for a movie that he has written and starred in that has not released yet. And it is the most buck wild album I've ever heard. He did all of these songs. There's one that sounds like it could have been done by Simple Plan. There's one that could have been done by Prince. There's one that is entirely a fucking Kendrick Lamar track. But these have all been done by Childish Gambino with other people jumping on the track as guests or whatever. The genre hopping that he is capable of doing and still making a good song blows me out of the fucking water. Every time I listened to his albums this year, my thought was, no. One person can't. No. That's not allowed. No.
That's not allowed.
I've been listening to him since I worked at Borders, Books and Music, back in St. Louis. So this was before I even moved here. We got an advanced copy of Camp, and I took it. And I have been listening to him ever since. So since 2011. This year, my wife got me tickets to see him live. His show in Nashville was one of the last live shows he was able to do before he went to get surgery and had to take a hiatus. I have never, ever seen an artist who was so in love with the art. Even during the intermission, when he was changing, he brought the mic back and sang acoustically while he was telling people to, and I quote, "Hey, go grab a drink, go have a smoke, take an edible, whatever makes you feel more comfortable here. Come back and we're going to have just as good of a time in the second half of this show." And then he jumped right back in to singing some of his very like piano driven, softer songs on his albums for the entirety of the intermission, like 20 minutes. He never stopped performing. It was incredible. Probably the best live show I've ever seen in my life. And that is why he is my number one this year. Because I'm going to keep listening to it. Like it's going to be a constant for the next, maybe even the rest of my life. Well, funnily enough, he is also credited as the inspiration for Miles Morales, the new Spider-Man. The Spider-Man.
Oh, I've heard this. Yeah.
The Spider-Man from Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Brian Michael Bendis, the creative director of Marvel at the time, had the idea, but fleshed it out once he saw Donald Glover. So hats off, Childish Gambino, Donald Glover. I love you so much.
I mean, you can see why. Yeah. I am not a fan to the level that you are, especially not like Childish Gambino, just because I don't listen to it regularly. But Atlanta is one of the greatest TV shows ever made. I won't even say it's a personal favorite. It's objective.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's won so much shit.
And one of the reasons I love that show so much is like the way it, and I'm not going to talk about this for too long because I know it's not the topic, but it is hilarious. It's weird. It's surreal and absurdist and like frightening at times and insightful and like so emotionally impactful. It's all these things at the same time, right? It'll pivot from the core cast of characters and like their struggles and their triumphs and their adventures. And then it just like suddenly we're in this standalone episode, like Big Payback, where it's like totally removed from that reality. Or even like there's that one episode with Darius, the Teddy Perkins episode, which is so weird and nightmarish. And it's like the standalone thing starring like one of the core cast members, but like off on this side adventure. And it's all over the place. And it manages to do all these different genres and tones so fluidly and perfectly. And you would think like that's a very jarring experience as a viewer, especially if you're watching multiple episodes in a row, to like be taken to all these places. But just you buckle in and you go along for the ride and you see where Donald Glover wants to take you.
Mm-hmm.
And you follow his career and it's that. And it's kind of what I just said with Game Changer. It's like, I don't understand how these people can be so talented on all these different things. Like, how do you have like the greatest comedic timing I've ever seen and be hysterical and then be such like a phenomenal dramatic actor and then just be over here doing this incredible music that also incorporates all these different genres?
Yeah.
And so like the same experience, like to sit down and watch Atlanta is to sit down and listen to a Childish Gambino album. Like, I don't know where this is going to go, especially like Bando Stone or like Ada Vista, like the more recent ones. Like, I have no idea. Like when the pop punk sort of ballad hits.
Yeah. Like,
whoa, I didn't think that was coming next. But then again, I didn't know what was coming next. And it's surprising. And then it's not, because like I expected to go somewhere crazy.
It blows my mind that he is able to do a full-on pop-punk song and immediately follow it with a song that you could hear on a Kendrick Lamar album today. Like, just no problem. You go from, I think it's Running Around, and then go back to Yoshinoya, and you're like, these are songs done by two different people, two entirely disparate communities even. And he's like, no, I like music.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting. Like you made a playlist that you talked about earlier, shared that with me, and I listened through it. It's like, and I don't have a Childish Gambino playlist, but he does show up on some of mine. And we don't have any of the same songs aside from, did we have any?
Maybe Heartbeat?
No. What was the one?
Redbone?
Oh, did you have Redbone on yours?
I think so.
Okay, I had Redbone. Like I got the Violence you asked earlier. The Violence from Ada Vista. Good. That's nestled in right next to Shuggy Otis. Like that. I think like when he gets into that sort of funk zone, because like that one stands out. Final Church, Boogeyman, Redbone. Yeah, like those.
absolutely blew me away this year. Like I listened to Bando Stone probably for 40 hours. It was the only album that I played on Spotify for about 40 hours, I would say. Right. And then I was driving home from something and feeling like shit. And I turned on Ada Vista on accident. And I was like, it's Gambino. And then the beat hit for Algorithm. And I was like, oh shit, this is good. And I listened to the whole album like, oh no, is this as good as Bando Stone? No, I can't have two albums that I have to listen to all the time this year. What the fuck am I going to do with my... No, don't do this.
Yeah, I definitely prefer Ada Vista. Like, Bando Stone is a very interesting album, and I really like a couple tracks on it. But overall, yeah, it doesn't rank
more
for me.
Cohesive. It goes so hard. Bando Stone is a more artistic and interesting album, but Ada Vista is an album that I could listen to at least once a day, if not more, and never get tired of it.
It's good shit, man.
And that's why he's my number one. Like, it will probably continue to be my number one. Like, damn.
My number one, I don't have a good segue. It's Free Ren.
Yeah.
I was trying to, how do you get from Childish Gambino to Elf and fantasy? I don't know. Free Ren, Beyond Journey's End, the anime series based on the manga Soso no Frieren, which is, the title's a little bit different. It's like Free Ren at the Funeral or Free Ren the Slayer. It's a Japanese manga series written by Kanehito Yamada, illustrated by Tsukasa Abe. And it has been going since April 2020.
The manga?
The manga, yeah.
Okay.
And then we had, so what we were talking about today is the anime series, which is my first experience. I have not read the manga, although, talking about sourcing, I'm getting on that shit because I cannot wait. I got to know. I can't wait for season 2. But we had an anime season come out September of last year, and it ran until March of this year. So it got recommended to me a couple of times when it first dropped by friends of mine who enjoy anime. But I kind of waited on it a little bit. I've kind of been behind on my anime game, to be honest, in recent years. Like, I still find myself watching older series, not as much modern stuff. But man, once I started this, it didn't even take a full episode. I want to say within like 10 or 15 minutes, I had already felt more than I feel watching full seasons of other shows, whether animated or live action. I don't even know. I guess I'll share the synopsis because probably a lot of our listeners aren't familiar. So this is from Crunchyroll, where I've been watching it, where you can watch it as well.
And you should.
You should. After the party of heroes defeated the Demon King, they restored peace to the land and returned to lives of solitude. Generations pass, and the elven mage Frieren comes face to face with humanity's mortality. She takes on a new apprentice and promises to fulfill old friends' dying wishes. Can an elven mind make peace with the nature of life and death? Frieren embarks on her quest to find out. So, just as a setup, I love it already. We start our journey at the end of the journey, Beyond Journey's End. We start with the big bad being toppled. We are celebrating in the streets at the accomplishment of the quest.
In the words of another podcast I love very much, not another D&D podcast, it is the campaign after the campaign.
Yep, that's a good way to refer to it. Yes. I don't even, like, I don't want to ramble for an hour on this show. I could want to. It's one of the greatest beginnings of any show ever, to me. The tone of this show, the intentionality of every scene, like, and it makes time for like moments of stillness, the characters to watch a meteor shower, and just like let the viewer intuit and read into like pauses between characters, silences, and conversation, and how characters respond to Friren's like conception and outlook on time. I think just, I keep coming back to that because we've seen this before. You see it a lot in like the Lord of the Rings movies. Like, we think about time and how elves experience time differently, being the long-lived beings that they are, right? And what does that mean if you're in a relationship with Aragorn, a mortal, you know? But it's usually contained to like that, like a situational thing. And we think about that. But this is a show built around really exploring like every aspect of what it would be like to be a being that has been extant on this planet for over 1,000 years.
And will continue to be extant on the planet for another several thousand.
And what that would mean for your personal relationships and how you would look at situations and adventures so differently. Like like her party, we keep coming back to this party of this adventure that we've started the show at the end of, and their 10-year quest to take down the Demon King, and how meaningful that was to all of these characters and how much it meant for their lives and how it changed them as people. And every time Frieren talks about it, it's like it was nothing. It was 10 years. It was just a decade. I didn't even really get to know them that well because we were only together for this short period of time. And yet in the midst of that, like how she, in spite of herself, starts to understand like the moral perspective and how meaningful these experiences can be, even though they are just like a blip in time. And I think really why this show is so meaningful to me is like, as a viewer, I find myself having all kinds of personal connections as I watch it. As I'm like thinking about and watching the reality of this world, I think about my own life in relationship to like my time, my past, how time passed so differently when I was younger, you know, at like such a slower pace. And yet how time moves so quickly in those times when I like look back at young me now, and how these like just momentary little flashes in the pan, flashes in time, like have so much importance to this day. You know what I mean? You look back at something like your youth, your time in college, a semester you studied abroad, a relationship you had, someone you knew. And when you break it down, like, oh, that was just like a couple months. And now for guys in our 30s, you know, like that feels like nothing. A month is just, it goes by in an instant. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And to look at it like to measure the time and look at it on that metric, and then to slow down and remember how important it was and how important a month can be, a week can be, a day can be, an hour spent in the right company or doing something that is meaningful to you. And I love how the show, it lets you understand both, because in these moments, in these situations, in these scenes, you get all of the human characters around here, all the mortals, talking about how important these experiences are and how much it meant to them. And you feel their emotion, but then as a viewer, like this is all getting thrown at you in the first episode, in the first half of the first episode. So like you feel the emotion from these performances, and I can't speak to the English dub. You said it was very good. I watched it in Japanese. It's amazing. So it's acted well. But as a viewer, I have not seen these events transpire. I'm just being told about them. And I feel it from the characters because it's well acted and well written. But then I also am focalizing through Frieren, who has some distance from those events and doesn't treat them with the same importance, seemingly. And because I'm like, as a viewer, also unfamiliar with these characters largely, I'm able to understand her distance from them, like focalize effectively through her, because I have some distance from them as a viewer, right? Because I haven't seen them. But then I also can feel that on their part. And I think like, just for me, like in the midst of watching, to recognize what the show is doing and how it is balancing those two perspectives so well, I could just like ramble on and on about like why it is effective in its setup. But then again, on top of that, it's funny, it's sweet, it's profound in its explorations of these characters and of time and how the world moves on.
Yep, made me cry.
Just comes through. Yeah, I welled up. I didn't get to full tears, but I was close, like in an episode or two. Yeah, that's something like if it's gonna hit, it's gonna hit in like the finale or whatever.
No, like like you said with Game Changer, like this was something that I sat down and watched all 4 episodes you recommended I watch in one go. Like even to the point where I was like, man, it's late. I need to just crash. But damn it. All right, we'll finish this one.
Yeah, you got to. I was there. It's
crushing, man. It's crushing.
I burned through it. It's it's so emotionally effective, and that's kind of what I've been talking about most of all. But then again, it's just so clever on top of that, like all these little just scenes and situations, like unsealing the demon, and he breaks out Zoltrak.
Yeah,
you know, and we've been hearing about this spell, and it's like built up like, oh, this is the spell, and then just you don't really understand going into the scene. You just see the fight play out, and they easily dispatch this former big bad from the previous quest. It's Frieren and her, the mage that she's mentoring, Fern. And it's like, oh yeah, you've been sealed for 80 years. We incorporated that spell into our magic system long ago, and now it's like a basic ass spell, and we can use a normal defensive spell, and it's nothing. And little things like that, they're like, oh yeah, how time moves on. And it's always satisfying to, like, especially in the video game space, right? Like returning to a level 1 after you've been to like level 10. And like, if you have the ability to fast travel back or whatever, as like the fully upgraded, fully well-equipped thing you are. And like, oh, I remember when these enemies kicked my ass, and now I'm one-shotting them, you know, like a scene that sort of like encapsulates that. Just so many, like, there's just so many great moments of dialogue too, you know, like the characters. I feel so much for these characters in the span of those 4 episodes, which I kind of just want to talk about those since that's all you watched. Like Haitor and his belief in heaven, like the priest, the drunken priest, like, does heaven exist? I don't know. Even if it doesn't exist, I believe that it should. Isen's line of like, yeah, that journey that we had, it's a 1/100th of your life, but it changed you. You know, like these moments that like, oh, that's such a good line. That's such a good line that hits. Even like the intro to the next episode, it's always like this inundation of like little dialogue snippets and text across the screen, almost like I don't know, like Jim Carrey getting prayed to as God and Bruce Almighty. It's just like this. It's everywhere. It's just like this inundation of sound of humanity. But it's like, yes, you think about as we get older, like how many experiences we have and how many connections we can make to our past experiences and the things we're experiencing now. A lifetime that we can have make connections between. And you think about that compounded like over 1,000 years, and like what it would be like to be an elf, to have 1,000 years of experiences to be remembering and making connections to in every moment potentially, right? Like, oh, this reminds me of the time I did that, and you know what, I did that 300 other times over the years, you know, and like it would be an unrelenting, overbearing almost amount of time and experience that you're holding within that mind, you know?
Yeah.
I think the only thing I could just keep going, because like I would love to talk about the whole series. I've gone on long enough, but like I think there's like one encapsulating thing. It's you didn't get here yet, so I won't share any details. But when you get to your first kind of like main antagonist, or like just kind of like momentary like big bad, our first major obstacle, we do that trope where we've got our hero against like seemingly impossible odds. And like, how are they going to get out of this situation? And then, well, we flash back to, hey, remember the time we learned this skill or developed this magic or had this experience here, and then forms the solution to this current problem. We flash back to that. We explore that in a scene. We jump back into the present. And that's the answer. And then our hero unleashes that ability. And they win the fight, or whatever it is, right?
So she's Slumdog Millionaires him.
Kind of that kind of thing. I like, my go-to is Beatrix Kiddo and Kill Bill, like busting out of the coffin, you know, like buried underground. Like, how is she going to get out of this? And like, oh, well, she trained with Pai Mei, so let's go back to that. And like, that's one of my favorite ever. It's so good. But even when they're good, sometimes you can kind of see what they are. Like, yeah, they're a little contrived, maybe. Like, you can sort of see the narrative thread, like the strings being pulled by the author or the creator, right, to like make this work.
But it doesn't change the impact, right? I mean,
it
like,
doesn't.
This show, like, the impact is not lessened by the trope, and that's what's so clever for me.
Yeah, I guess my point is, sometimes you can see the trope for what it is and just love it anyway, and sometimes you don't really even notice it as a trope. And I think in Frieren, like, I guess I did, because I'm, you know, talking about it as such.
But maybe after the fact?
Yeah, again, because I'm like trying to be like kind of critical and analytical about it. But like in the moment of watching it, because this show, because of the way it's structured, and it's constantly taking you, jumping around time, increasingly so as the show goes on, you're going to so many different points in time in this character's life that it's natural to just like, yeah, this is how the narrative has unfolded thus far. This is the structure of the narrative. We move through time again and again, constantly in and out of the present moment. And so to like do that in the midst of a battle and to like explore this previous point in time where something is explained, it doesn't feel jarring or tropey. It feels like, yeah, this is the way Free-Ren thinks about the world and time because she's lived for so long. And this is the way that we are understanding her journey because it's the way the show has been structured thus far. It's the way the journey's been shown. So like even stuff like that, like, oh man, stuff that might feel kind of tropey, it doesn't. It's perfect. It's my number one. 10 out of 10. I love it.
Oh,
really do.
Man alive. It was very good. But that is putting us pretty close to maybe talking too much about our stuff, gang. And we're sorry if we are. But we love it all so much.
I'm sorry, but I'm not really that sorry.
Yeah, I'm not that sorry because honestly, if you check it out, you'll understand. But be that as it may, let's move on to housekeeping, shall we? You can find us on all of your social medias at Source Not Found Podcast or Source Not Found Pod. Please check out our YouTube that has a complete archive of all our podcast episodes, as well as archives of Brandon's Twitch stream of all video games that have been played in regards to the podcast. And speaking of that, Brando, what is going on with Twitch during this holiday season?
I got some fun stuff planned, teacher life. I got a decent break. So, yeah, I've been like finishing up some games that I left unfinished from this year. I got a couple fun holiday events that I won't spoil. Come on by the channel, twitch.tv/LegionsBug. Link down in the show notes. But I will say, January, I do a thing every year. An annual tradition that I've done exactly one time. But here's number 2.
Just like this episode.
Yeah, callback. A month-long celebration of janky or just downright bad games. So this year I'm doing a thing where anyone who subscribes to the channel, they get to put a game on the wheel of jank. We spin the wheel, pick a janky or bad game, we play through it. When the game is done, we spin the wheel again. And the wheel is just going to be populated by, if last year is any indication, some real horse shit. I hope nothing tests me like Superman 64 or Bible Adventures. Listeners of the show, yeah. That one. Played that on stream. Those games tested me. But
that game.
I also had Daikatana. Yeah, just some real gems. Daikatana is actually kind of interesting.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
no, it's not.
I don't know. I don't have any words. I just have a
sure. Yeah, that's about what it is.
That's why I have a review of Daikatana. Yeah. So John Romero. So yeah, come on by Twitch, see what I'm doing. Also, come by Twitch. Our theme song from Jesse Jelena, aka Saint Coelacanth, streams there under the Saint Coelacanth username. Also is on YouTube where you can check out his music. He just dropped an EP, Playing Scale Minotaur. Fucking slaps. Check that out. Real good. So if you like that theme song, there is a lot more where that came from. Final thanks of the year. The people who keep us going. Our patrons.
We love you.
Our shout out tier. Thank you so much to Joey Bishop, Frederick Viberg Warhog, 13th Horseman, Susie Daggs, and Jacob Spindell.
Friendship.
And just a little follow-up on that. For those of you who have not joined our Patreon, 1, for shame, and 2, we kind of get it. And for those of you on the Patreon who don't like the whole month-to-month thing, Patreon is doing something starting in January where you can buy a whole year prescription. You can prescribe through your doctor some Source Not Found for a whole year via Patreon instead of paying the month to month.
Ask your doctor if Source Not Found is right for you. Every new prescription comes with a month trial of Blue Leech.
Oh,
from Dracula
Jesus
2000.
Christ.
Drop those down below and you are good to go.
But yeah, it's a really nice feature they're introducing. It gives you a little bit of a monetary benefit for doing the whole year. And it doesn't make it so you get money pulled from your account every year. So maybe that's a better way for you to check our various and sundry shenanigans out.
Hell yeah. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I kind of dig it. But with that being said, thank you all so much. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. And don't forget to check your toilet for a 1,000-year-old elf hand? What? Why is that there?
It scared me, but then I also was overcome with emotion and started considering my relationship to time.
It's fine. It won't even notice we're here. We'll be dead before it even, cares, really.
That bowel movement was a big deal to you, but for me, it was just a brief blip in existence. Stay doing that homework. Class dismissed.
I loved how the episode ended in almost a weird somber tone. And then you demand for the listener to do homework. Not even just a polite, hey guys, Happy New Year, do your homework. It's, no, you fucking do your homework. I swear to God, I will be that 1,000-year-old hand in your toilet, you little bastard.
It's kind of class for my run.
Happy New Year.